All right. So, everyone's always talking about training in the right zones for endurance, right?
Hmm.
But those like generic formulas that they have based on like just your age,
Hmm.
they never really like quite felt right to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that.
So I'm really excited to dig into this book we have, Endurance Training, Optimized with Metabolic Testing,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
because I think this is going to give us some answers.
For sure, for sure. What I think is really interesting about this book
Yeah.
is that it kind of exposes the limitations of this whole like one-size-fits-all approach
Yeah.
to training.
Yeah.
It's like, are we really all that predictable just based on like,
Right.
how many candles were on our last birthday cake?
Exactly. It makes no sense.
No.
So what is the alternative then?
Right.
Because clearly just going by feel isn't really very scientific.
No, not at all. Well, the book argues that metabolic testing is really the key,
Okay.
but unlocking your truly personalized training zones.
So we're talking about going beyond just heart rate then.
Yes.
It's like, what exactly does metabolic testing even involve?
Well, it gets into like the nitty-gritty
Okay.
of your physiology during exercise.
Okay.
There's a couple of key tests that they focus on in the book. One is the VO2 max test,
Right.
which measures the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can use.
Okay.
So you can think of it as kind of gauging how efficiently your engine is running
Gotcha.
when you're like really pushing it.
Okay. So like finding the red line on your own personal engine?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then there's the lactate threshold test.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps determine the point where your body starts producing lactate faster than it can clear it.
Okay.
And knowing this is really crucial for endurance athletes.
Yeah.
Because it basically tells you like how hard you can push before like fatigue really sets in.
Yeah. That's super helpful. But I've always been kind of intimidated
Yeah.
by the idea of metabolic testing. It always just sounded like something that only elite athletes do.
I think that's a really common misconception, actually.
Yeah.
The book actually emphasizes that metabolic testing is becoming way more accessible
Oh, cool.
and beneficial for athletes at all levels.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's say I get the testing done.
Right.
What kind of information does it actually, like, give you?
Right.
And then how does that translate into, like, better training?
Well, it goes way beyond just like telling you your training zones.
Okay.
It gives you data on things like your oxygen consumption, fat and carbohydrate utilization,
Okay.
and of course, like we said, your lactate threshold.
Right.
And by like pinpointing all of these markers,
Yeah.
you can really like dial in your training zones
Okay.
with much more precision.
So, like, less guesswork.
Yeah,
And more science.
exactly. Yeah.
Making this.
Yeah. And the benefits go beyond just training zones.
Okay.
Think about like fueling, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know your precise fat burning zone,
Right.
you can actually train your body to tap into those fat stores way more efficiently,
Okay.
which is crucial for like long distance events.
So it's not just about burning fat during the workout. It's
Right.
like teaching your body
Perfect.
to become a fat-burning machine.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that translates into like delayed glycogen depletion,
Okay.
meaning you'll have more energy reserves when you need them the most.
Interesting.
No more hitting the wall prematurely.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this is a game changer.
Yeah,
But recovery is just as important as like the hard workouts, right?
absolutely.
So how does metabolic testing help with that?
Well, it helps you kind of avoid overtraining
Okay.
by ensuring that your recovery sessions are actually at the right intensity.
Gotcha.
So no more like feeling guilty
Yeah.
about taking it easy, because you'll know that those lower intensity days are crucial
Okay.
for allowing your body to like repair
Right.
and come back stronger.
Yeah. So it takes the guesswork out of recovery too.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah. And the book really highlights how all of this contributes to one of the biggest benefits,
Okay.
which is optimized performance gains.
Right.
So like every workout that you do is contributing effectively
Yeah.
to your overall endurance development.
That's what I'm talking about.
No more wasted effort
Yeah.
or wondering if you're training at the right intensity.
But let's get even more specific.
Sure.
The book also mentions personalized pacing strategies.
Yes.
So how does metabolic testing inform that?
So imagine you're running a marathon.
Okay.
By understanding your lactate threshold and your VO2 max,
Right.
you can develop a race plan that aligns perfectly with your body's capabilities.
Gotcha.
No more going out too fast and burning out before the finish line.
So it's like having a custom roadmap for race day,
Exactly.
guiding us to that peak performance
Yeah.
we've been working so hard for.
That's a great way to put it.
I'm starting to think everyone should have their metabolic test results, like, framed on their wall.
That's a great visual.
You know?
Yeah. It's really about empowering yourself
Yeah.
with knowledge and insights to become a better,
Right.
stronger, and more resilient endurance athlete.
I love that knowledge is power.
Exactly.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Sure.
I would love to hear more about, like, the specific benefits
Okay.
that the book highlights,
Yeah.
because it sounds like we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've established that metabolic testing is pretty awesome,
Yeah,
but I'm all about the practical stuff.
sure.
So let's get into some of those specific benefits that really stood out to you in the book.
Okay, yeah. One that I found particularly intriguing was this idea of like improving your pacing strategy,
Okay.
not just for race day,
Right.
but for every single workout.
How so? I mean, I get that knowing your lactate threshold can help you avoid going too hard, but how does that apply to, like, an easy run, for example?
Well, the book actually uses this great example
Okay.
of this runner who thought that they were doing their recovery runs like slow enough,
Right.
but their metabolic testing actually showed that they were dipping into zone 3,
Oh, wow.
which was hindering their recovery.
So even on those, like, easy days,
Yeah,
you could be unknowingly pushing too hard.
exactly. Exactly. And then on the flip side, you have some athletes who might be going too easy in their hard workouts.
Interesting.
So metabolic testing can really help you kind of find that sweet spot
Gotcha.
for every section,
Okay.
ensuring you're getting the most out of your training time.
Talk about efficiency. I'm seeing
Yeah.
how this could apply to so many different aspects of training.
Yeah.
What else did they highlight?
They went into a lot of detail about the benefits for interval training.
Okay.
Knowing your VO2 max
Yeah.
allows you to set these incredibly precise targets
Okay.
for those high-intensity bursts. It's like having a scientific formula for pushing your limits
Right.
safely and effectively.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like I've always kind of winged it with intervals,
Yeah.
just kind of going by feel.
Sure.
Sounds much more strategic.
Yes, much more. And speaking of strategy,
Yeah.
they also talk about how metabolic testing can help you identify your individual strengths and weaknesses.
Oh.
So, for example, you might discover that you have like a naturally high VO2 max,
Mm.
but a lower lactate threshold,
Okay.
which would then obviously inform your training plan.
So it's not just about those, like, cookie cutter training zones.
Exactly.
It's about, like, tailoring the workouts to your own unique physiological profile.
Precisely.
Gotcha.
The book even discusses how this information can help you choose the right events or distances to focus on.
Oh, wow.
So maybe you're better suited for shorter, more intense races
Okay.
versus like long, steady state events.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like metabolic testing helps you unlock your athletic potential in a way that, like, generic training plans never could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I thought was really interesting
Yeah.
was the emphasis on long-term progress.
Okay.
They argue that by training with this level of precision,
Right.
you're not just chasing short-term gains.
Right.
You're building a solid foundation for years to come.
So it's not just about, like, crushing your next race.
Yeah,
It's about developing as an athlete over time.
exactly.
That's a really cool perspective.
It all comes back to that idea of like working smarter, not harder.
Right.
Metabolic testing gives you the knowledge to make every workout count.
Yeah.
Whether it's a hard interval session or an easy recovery run,
Right.
it's about making those informed decisions that lead to sustainable progress.
I love how the book ties all of these benefits together.
Yeah.
It really paints this, like, compelling picture
Yeah.
of how personalized training can just, like, elevate your entire approach to endurance sports.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not just about numbers and data.
Yeah.
Right. It's about empowering athletes to take control of their training
Yeah.
and achieve their full potential.
But let's be real, metabolic testing isn't exactly cheap or easy to access for everyone.
Sure.
So for someone who's intrigued by this, what would you say is, like, a good first step?
I think the most important thing is education.
Okay.
So, start by doing some research,
Yeah,
reading articles, maybe listening to other podcasts.
absolutely.
like this one
Knowledge is power.
that delves into this topic.
Yeah, and once you have a better understanding of what metabolic testing is all about,
Right.
then you can decide if it's something you actually want to pursue.
Exactly. There are also like online resources and calculators
Oh, right.
that can give you some like basic insights
Okay.
into your potential training zones,
Right.
although they won't be as precise as a lab test.
Right. So it's about taking those initial steps towards personalized training,
Yeah,
even if you're not ready to jump into full-blown metabolic testing just yet.
exactly. And remember, it's a journey. Every athlete's path is different,
Right.
and there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Of course.
The key is to find what works best for you
Right.
and keep exploring those possibilities.
Speaking of exploring, I'm curious about your personal experience with this.
Sure.
Have you seen firsthand how metabolic testing can transform an athlete's training and performance?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've worked with athletes who were like struggling to break through plateaus.
Okay.
And once they got their metabolic testing done,
Right.
it was like a light bulb went off.
Wow.
They finally understood how to train their bodies
Yeah.
in a way that aligned with their unique physiology.
So it's not just a theoretical concept.
Right.
You've seen real-world results.
Definitely. And it's not always about like dramatic improvements overnight.
Okay.
Sometimes it's about those subtle tweaks and adjustments
Gotcha.
that make a huge difference over time.
Right.
It's about that gradual unlocking of potential that comes with understanding your body on a deeper level.
I love that. Yeah. It's about playing the long game, being patient, and trusting the process.
Mhm.
But before we get too philosophical here,
Sure.
let's bring it back to our listeners.
Okay.
What's one, like, tangible takeaway you want them to walk away with from this deep dive?
Okay.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there's like so much more to endurance training than just putting in the miles.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's about understanding the science behind how our bodies adapt
Yeah.
and respond to different stimuli.
Absolutely.
And that's where metabolic testing comes in.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of the equation.
Right.
And provides that personalized roadmap for optimizing your training.
Exactly. It's like having a secret weapon
Yeah,
that unlocks your true potential.
for sure.
But I also really appreciate the book's emphasis on the long game.
Yes.
You know, it's not about those quick fixes or overnight success.
Right.
It's about making informed decisions that
Right.
lead to sustainable progress.
Absolutely. It's about building that foundation
Yeah.
for long-term athletic development.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I'd add to that is the importance of mindset.
Oh, interesting.
How does that play into all of this?
Well, metabolic testing can be incredibly empowering.
Okay.
It gives you like concrete data
Right.
that validates your efforts and shows you what you're truly capable of.
Right.
And that knowledge can like really boost your confidence and motivation,
Okay.
leading to even greater results.
So it's not just about physical adaptations.
Yeah.
It's about mental adaptations as well.
Precisely. When you believe in your abilities
Mm-hmm.
and understand how to train your body effectively,
Right.
it creates this like powerful synergy that can really propel you to new heights.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about that mind-body connection that's so essential for success in endurance sports.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's important to acknowledge that metabolic testing isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
You know, it's a tool.
It is.
And like any tool, it needs to be used correctly.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. The data from metabolic testing is only as good as the interpretation and application.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important to work with like a qualified coach or sports scientist
Right.
who can help you translate those numbers into a training plan
Yeah.
that aligns with your goals.
So it's not just about getting the test done.
Right.
It's about finding the right guidance to make sense of it all.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing process.
Right.
Your body is constantly adapting.
Yeah.
So regular testing and adjustments to your training plan
Right.
are key to like staying on track
Yeah.
and maximizing your potential.
It sounds like metabolic testing is just the beginning of a really exciting journey of self-discovery and athletic development.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. It's all about embracing that journey
Yeah.
and pushing ourselves to see what we're truly capable of.
Well said. So to all of our listeners out there, if you're ready to take your training to the next level, don't be afraid to explore the world of metabolic testing.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover about yourself and your potential.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Yes.
The more you understand about your body and how it responds to training,
Right.
the more you can optimize your performance and achieve your endurance goals.
So keep exploring, keep pushing your limits.
Yes.
And most importantly, keep believing in yourself.
Yeah.
Until next time, happy training, everyone.